Hello boys, welcome back to another session of online video tutorials, and this session is meant for class 12th biology students, and this is for 1st July 2021. As we have been discussing about chapter 2 sexual reproduction in flowering plants, we were having discussion on male reproductive organ, that is androecium, and female reproductive organ gynoecium. And today we will be talking about once the microspores are ready, functional megaspore is ready. Now the question is, the functional megaspore nucleus should get united with the nucleus of the microspore, or male nucleus 1 in particular. So before that happens, there is a phenomenon called pollination that should take place. What is this pollination? It is the transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma of a pistil. So the main duty is that the pollen grain from the anther should somehow reach the stigma. Then only that paves for fertilization. Since this should happen before fertilization, we say pre-fertilization. And for this to happen, certain agents are required, certain media are required, and let's see what are all those. So there are varieties of types of pollination based on the source of pollen. Pollination is of three types. One, autogamy. You can see self-pollination. Auto means self, gamy fusion. Autogamy, self-pollination. As you are seeing, the transfer of pollen grains from the anther of this flower, same flower, is transferred to stigma of the same flower, as you are seeing here. So that is autogamy. Geitonogamy, the plant is same, but the pollen grains of one flower are transferred to stigma of another flower, but the plant is same, geitonogamy. Whereas in xenogamy, the pollen grains of a flower of one plant is transferred to the stigma of another plant. Then xenogamy. Of course, one criteria is there in xenogamy, species should be same. Then only the future things will happen. So in autogamy, where we say it is self-pollination, it is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to stigma, and the flower should be same. So autogamy we can define as the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to stigma of the same flower. In flowers with exposed anthers, stigma, complete autogamy is rare. Autogamy in such flowers requires what we call synchrony in pollen release and stigma receptivity. That means when the anther is matured, dehiscence takes place, pollen grains are released. At the same time, the stigma should be in a position to receive. Receptivity should be there. That means certain hormones should be secreted, some enzyme should be there in that stigma region. Then only the pollen grain released from anther falling on the stigma can generate. Okay, pollen generation can take place. So if this synchronization is missing, even though pollen grains are falling on the stigma, there is of no use. Also, anthers and stigma should be close to each other. These are the two conditions. We say pistil-pollen interaction. So the interaction should be in synchronization. Then only pollination takes place. And then autogamy, further plants like viola, that is common pansy, oxalis, camelina, produce two types of flowers. You can see here, chasmogamous flowers and cleistogamous flowers. Now I want you to focus on this picture. Chasmogamous, where the flower is open. Look at that, flower is open. Cleistogamous flowers, look at that, the flower is closed. Cleistogamous flowers closed. So easily you can remember CLE, cleisto, closed, CLO, CL, CL. Okay. Chasmogamous flowers are open flowers. You can see here Axalis, Camelina, Viola. In all these, the flowers are open, right? And the chasmogamous flowers, they are similar to flowers of other species with exposed anthers and stigma. This is important. So since they are exposed, the pollination can take place. Autogamy can take place at any time. Whereas in cleistogamous, as the name says, spelling CL. So remember CL, closed flower. So they don't open at all, unfortunately. So anthers and stigma lie close to each other, as you are seeing. They lie close to each other. And they are autogamous, auto. When anthers dehisce, that is dehiscence of anthers take place, pollen grains are released in the flower buds. Pollen grains come in contact with stigma for pollination within that because it is closed. So cleistogamous flowers produce assured seed set even in the absence of pollinators. Since it is same flower, since it is closed, there are advantages as well as disadvantages. Advantages, they don't require any pollinator. Okay, no bird, no insect, no air, no water, not required. And second, the genotype is maintained, genetic identity is maintained. But what is the disadvantage? No varieties. Same thing will be keep on producing. So cleistogamy leads to what we call inbreeding depression. So it leads to inbreeding depression. Now, when we talk of this inbreeding depression, we talk of what we call that the genetic genome will not be changed further. It will be maintained, so there will be no varieties formed. Next, zetonogamy. So the second one, zetonogamy. It is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of another flower, but see, condition is there. What is that? Same plant. So it is functionally cross-pollination involving a pollinating agent. Here it requires either water or air or some human being, bird, insect, something. So pollinating agent is required because it is one flower to another flower. But it is genetically similar because it is the same plant. And it is genetically similar, so it is comparable to autogamy. Zetonogamy can be comparable to autogamy as far as genome is concerned, since the pollen grains come from the same plant. So that is zetonogamy. And third type, xenogamy. It is the transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma of different plants. Look at this. This is plant 1 and this is plant 2. So it is definitely xenogamy requires pollinating agents. And also, since the gene set is changed from plant to plant, there is genetic variability. So it brings genetically different pollen grains to the stigma. So xenogamy is always advantageous as far as varieties are to be formed. So we say it is cross-pollination, allogamy. So it is the process of transfer of pollen grains from anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower of genetically different plant of same species. Hence it is known as xenogamy. And for xenogamy and zetonogamy, we said some agents are required. So what are those agents? Now, before we go to the agents, what are the contrivances for cross-pollination? What comes in between in the way of cross-pollination? As I said, the most important one is pistil-pollen interaction. There should be synchronization. If that synchronization is not there, then this will not happen. What is that? First one, decliny or unisexuality. The plants may be monoecious or dioecious. Monoecious plant is that in which male and female flower organs are found on the same plant but in different flowers. Example, maize. Dioecious plant is that in which male and female flowers appear on separate individuals, like you are seen in mulberry, Vallisneria. So there is a problem. Self-sterility, second one. The pollen of the flower has no fertilizing effect on the stigma of the same flower. Example, tea, passion flower, passiflora. Then dichogamy, male and female sex organs mature at different times. Look at that, synchronization is not there. There are two different conditions. One is protandry, anthers mature earlier than the carpels, like in sunflower, and protogeny, carpels mature earlier than the anthers, like in mustard, brassica. Then heterostyly, in some plants, flowers have two, that is dimorphic, three trimorphic forms of anthers and stigmas at different levels. And last, hercogamy. It is the presence of natural and physical barriers between androecium and gynoecium that help in avoiding self-pollination. Like in Calotropis, gynoecium is fused with anthers to form gynostegium, and pollination can occur through insects only. So we go with the agents now. After knowing what are the barricades that can take place, basically agents of two types, biotic agents and abiotic agents. Abiotic agents are wind and water. Biotic agents, insects, birds, bats, primates, arboreal rodents and reptiles. So you are seeing all this in the pictures, in the photos. Now abiotic agents, wind. Pollination by wind is called anemophily. Look at that. Pollination by wind is called anemophily. More common abiotic agent. Wind pollinated flowers often have a single ovule in each ovary and numerous flowers packed into an inflorescence. Example, corn cob. You can see here the tassels are in the stigma and style which have in the wind to trap pollen grains. Wind pollination is quite common in all the grasses. So what is the basic condition for anemophily? They should be lightweight. So anemophily is an abiotic means of pollination by wind and being non-directional. It's a wasteful process. Anemophilous flowers have exhausted stigmas and anthers. This is important. Pollen grains should be light, small and dusty. They are dry and unwettable. Stigma is hairy, feathery or branched to catch the wind-borne pollen grains. So this is the importance of wind. So flowers produce large amount of pollens naturally. Look at this, large amounts. Pollen grains are light and non-sticky. They often possess well-exposed stamens for easy dispersion of pollen grains to the wind currents. Large feathery stigma to trap airborne pollen grains. Now we come to the second one, water. Hydrous means water, so hydrophily. Pollination by water is called hydrophily. It is quite rare. It is limited to about 30 genera, mostly monocotyledons. Example, Vallisneria. You are able to see the photo, Vallisneria. Hydrilla, freshwater one, and Josteria, marine sea grasses, as you are seeing here. But in lower plants, water is a regular mode of transport for the male gametes. Distribution of some bryophytes, pteridophytes is limited because they need water for the transport of male gametes and fertilization. So even the higher plants require water for fertilization. Then only the future zygote will be formed. Continuing with the hydrophily, in Vallisneria, you can see the plant. The female flower reaches the surface of water, as you are seeing here, by the long stalk, and the male flowers or pollen grains are released onto the surface of water. You are seeing here, the male ones are released. They are carried by water currents and reach the female flower. In sea grasses, female flowers remain submerged in water. Pollen grains are long and ribbon-like. they are carried inside the water and reach the stigma. And the pollen grains of most of the water pollinated species have a mucilaginous covering to protect from wetting. What happens if this layer is not there? Can you just imagine? So there will be decomposition of the tissue. So mucilaginous covering will protect the plant, whole plant. Not all aquatic plants use hydrophily, that we know. In most of the aquatic plants like water hyacinth, water lily, the flowers emerge above the level of water for entomophily or anemophily. Look at that, the flower is above the water level. Look at that water lily, water hyacinth. So wind water pollinated flowers are not very colorful and do not produce nectar. So this is the thing that you must remember. So wind water pollinated flowers are not very colorful. They do not produce nectar. Next, we come to biotic agents like animals. Used by majority of the flowering plants, angiosperms, example bees, butterflies, flies, beetles, wasps, ants, moths, birds, particularly sunbirds and hummingbirds, bats, primates, lemurs, arboreal, tree-dwelling rodents, reptiles like gecko, lizard, garden lizard, all these actively participate in pollination. Pollination by insects is called entomophily, entomophily. And particularly bees play a huge role in entomophily. And the entomophilous flowers are generally showy or brightly colored so that they should attract the insects. Most insect pollinated flowers have a landing platform. Edible pollens are usually produced in such flowers like clematis. Entomoflowers usually produce specific odor, may smell, to attract specific insects. The outer surface of pollen grains may be rough, spiny, and bears a yellow, oily, sticky substance called pollen kit. This is what the importance of entomophily. So pollination by insects is called entomophily. Particularly bees play an active role. Often flowers of animal pollinated plants are specifically adapted for a particular species of animals. And large, you can see the colorful and nice smell, fragrant and rich in nectar. Nectar and pollen grains are the floral rewards for pollination. Nectar and pollen grains. Small flowers form inflorescence to make them visible. You can see the inflorescence. The flowers are pollinated by flies and beetles, secrete foul odors to attract these animals. The pollen grains are generally sticky. Look at this, the bees, how they are doing it. And when the animal comes in contact with the anthers and the stigma, its body gets pollen grains. Look at this, the pollen grains are struck. This is the insect sitting there, you can see here, and the body has got a lot of pollen grains getting struck. Look at that. So when it comes in contact with the stigma, it results in pollination. And some plants provide safe places as floral reward to lay eggs also. Amorphophallus, it has the tallest flower of 6 feet. Look at that, Amorphophallus. A moth species and the plant Yucca cannot complete their life cycles without each other. Look at that, Yucca plant. The moth deposits its eggs in the locule of ovary. The flower gets pollinated by moth. The larvae come out of the eggs as seeds and start developing. So sort of symbiosis. And many insects consume pollen or nectar without bringing about pollination. They are called pollen robbers or nectar robbers. Okay? They don't go with